at this milestone, 100 episodes. If you asked me that 2-3 years ago, it would have been a great target set, but would I believe that we could have achieved it? I would probably not be sure. It's been a fantastic journey. I think there's a few things that stand out. The first is how it really helped to grow me as a person. It really have helped me, to develop myself, because being on 100 different podcasts, talking about a topic of your choice and being questioned by them, and they are of course bringing in their whole life experience and all the guests they've had before, and therefore you sort of keep developing yourself as a thought leader the whole time. So it's almost like a coaching journey in that sense. So that's the first one, really, to develop myself and the messaging that I have as a thought leader. But then, secondly, it has been great for my personal brand, the credibility from being, a guest in podcasts everywhere, in Ireland to Glasgow to Australia to Singapore to US. I've been all around the world now on these 100 shows, and obviously the personal branding that comes with that is a lot. Yes, I think what stands out here and why I have achieved these 100 episodes is also the honesty that I'm trying to have in and the conversations that I'm driving. Not everyone is comfortable talking about mental health, emotional health, addiction, and so on. So the topics that I have selected with you and the team has really been topics that has been in demand. I could already smell this before we started work, when journalists were calling me, saying, we want to interview someone who's gone through a challenging time, but everyone want to be anonymous. Well, I'm sorry, even on a podcast you cannot be anonymous. It's your face there, it's your real story. So, and people love to hear real stories. So my advice to anyone is, find your niche and then go out and talk and be a little bit vulnerable. That's what I've done, and it worked really well for me. Yeah, so I haven't had to spend too much time on this. Your team has done a great job there in filtering the podcast. I mainly told them, this is the kind of direction, these are the podcasts I would like to be on, and your team and then done the rest. But what we started in was in the mental health space. Then we basically moved over to the HR space, and now recently also over to athletes and professional sport. So once we pivoted over there, I have gone in and just had a look at what kind of podcast would I like to be on. I share that with your team, and then they come back with other podcasts and taking it forward. So it's really worked well, and I'm quite pleased to see that during this time now we are even pivoting in and getting me on some of the leading sports podcasts, which was my target for this year. Yes, I think a couple of the podcasts have been a little bit emotional, because the topics I've been talking about have been addiction and mental health recovery and so on. I've been on podcasts where the hosts themselves might have lost, in one instance I can remember, lost both the wife and the child due to addiction, and therefore set up a podcast to talk about this as a form of recovery. So it's been emotional moments, and I've been grateful to then share my story and what I've seen in the space, and together we've been spreading the message. And another podcast I was on, I can remember that it was also really to drive a positive cause toward breaking the stigma around discussing mental health, which is still, especially in the workplace, something that people are scared to talk about. So it has been moments that really have been hopefully changing the world to a better place to be. And we do this in the social media and drive the message on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of people reaching out, being very grateful for these honest conversations. Yeah, so for myself now, having achieved 100, let's say that the journey now over the next year will be to write a book for me. So if that's on a podcast a week, that's another 50 episodes, which will go hand in hand with my new book, where I'm talking about vulnerability in leadership. And I will test my ideas, every podcast I will bring in some new different ideas and talk about them. And then I can basically get that transcribed. I can use that towards my book. So that's going to be the next step for me. And also I'm looking forward to becoming a host myself. I am already a host of one podcast through my company, but I'm looking forward to set up perhaps my own show, which again will be then related to vulnerability and linked to my book, and that's something that I'm looking forward to talking to you and the team more further about.